Hello, good evening, and good afternoon, and wherever you are in this wide, wonderful world that we live in. You're listening to the Global Sales Leader podcast with your host, Jason Cooper. I'm a sales coach, sales strategist. I'm also a sales relationship coach. What does that mean? It means everything to your customers because it's all about creating that relationship with them. The more you can build that, you build that magic T, which is trust. Today, I have two wonderful guests here. Got David Pearson and John Hoskins, and I'm going to introduce them and bring them up to the stage. So, David, you are very welcome to the Global Sales Leader podcast. And also, I have another guest. We have John Hoskins, and I'm just going to move them around. In audio land, you're not actually going to see this magic, but in video land, I'm just going to move them around just for me. So thank you so much. I'm really excited today about chatting to you about all of your experience, your collective experience in the areas of leadership, sales coaching, and being a phenomenal sales trainer and so much more accolades. So, John, your history began with Xerox Learning Systems. Xerox is phenomenal. They have a great, from what I understand, they have a great training program for all the stuff that I've ever learned back in the day. I started out selling copiers, so I know the phenomenal training systems, and the envy of everyone was Xerox out there. So first appointed executive in Toronto office, became sales manager, obviously went up the ladder from there. John joined Omega Performance International Bank and founded Advantage Performance Group, and then lots of other things that we're going to be speaking about in a few moments with the level 5 series. And also David, welcome David. Thank you for joining me today.
We're honored to be here, Jason. Thanks for having us.
So David, CEO of Level 5 Selling, sales coaching consulting company. David, prior to this, True Blue, David was vice president of sales operation, Milner Hyman, global sales process consultant. He's got lots of accolades behind him. But rather than me telling about what you guys do, less of me talking about, more of you talking. So John, give us a little bit of tip points along the way to get to where you are now.
Well, thank you again, Jason, for having us. It's a pleasure to be here and speaking with you this morning. You highlighted the stepping stones in the career, and obviously Xerox was a big thing that shaped my future. I learned a lot there, but then went on to run sales organizations, start another sales organization, sales consulting company that was sold to a Swedish consulting organization. I have a sales assessment business that's an online assessment of salespeople. And in June of 2016, I had a bucket list item, which was to write a book. And I was in Vancouver, British Columbia on holiday in the summer. I wrote the book, I published it, and I had no intentions of starting another business. And the phone rang and the emails started coming in. People said, how can I get my sales force to sell like this? And at that point, that launched Level 5.
Awesome. And David, the same question to yourself, really. How do you get to where you are right now, and all the incremental steps along the way? And then we can get into the nuts and bolts of this podcast today.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Hey, well, as you mentioned, I spent 11 years with Miller Hyman, which is a sales performance company, and we've implemented sales processes and systems across many, many companies. I left there to take on a sales leadership role and went to work for a staffing company. Started off in construction trades and then ended up being moved to a president of the aviation business. Why I have an airplane right behind me here in the picture. Oh, yeah. And led the aviation group. And it went so well, they invited me to come be the head of sales at the corporate office up in the Seattle area, where I had a sales organization. All the sellers in the organization, about 1,000 people. So now it's all about how do you make something actually work in an organization, the challenges of a chief sales officer. And then I've known John Hoskins for 20 plus years, one of the most respected people in the industry. And we connected up and and join forces. And so I've been working with John now is now CEO of Level 5 Selling.
Wow, awesome stuff. So tell me this, thank you so much. I'm always very humbled when someone sends me books through the post, and all the way from the US. I think it might come from the UK, but I'm very honored with that. So I thank you so much for that. So writing one book is hard enough, but putting your head together with 3 books is phenomenal. So what was your inspiration? What's your inspiration to make you want to do what you do? That's for you, John.
Well, the first book really outlined the model of the Level 5 sales call. And our whole premise is based on making more quality sales calls. David referred, I think, in our early conversation to the fact that we've discovered through our own research and work with clients that 60% of all sales calls are scrap and waste. So if a sales organization is spending $10 million on sales and marketing, about 6 million of that is wasted. And no other function in the organization would allow that to happen. I mean, can you imagine David's Boeing client having 60% of the planes not taking off and landing well? So that's the premise, is if you can improve the quality of the overall call, everything else will move from there. So then the blinding glimpse of the obvious was that I didn't think the world needed another sales training program. And I knew that most sales training programs had not delivered the expectations that the investors who purchased the program had made. They tended to be event oriented, and there was lack of reinforcement, lack of follow-up, lack of coaching, lack of practice. And so that led to the second book, the Level 5 Coaching System. And then the third book was when Dick Roof and I joined forces, and we didn't look just at the quality of a sales call and coaching a call, or the quality of a particular opportunity and coaching account strategy, but we looked at a broader picture of performance challenges that the frontline sales leader faces and has to have a conversation with someone about turning it around. So it could be, John's 120% plan, but he's toxic and the back shop doesn't want to work with him. Well, now you have to have a conversation with John. How do you coach John on that issue? And that's
so. I'm intrigued now because things have changed from us being face to face and side by side and all that. Hopefully, it's going back to where it was. But now it's all blended. It's a blended approach to whatever we do. So, how do we reinforce everything along the way now, and how do we effectively do this as leaders or as trainers to be more effective at what we do? David, you can answer that one.
Well, I think it's a great question, Jason. And just to add on to what John said, look, 60% of these calls are scrap and waste. And what we mean by that is they just fail to move the buying process forward. We're going on calls and they're not moving the buying process forward. And it's a huge issue. What we see amongst sales organizations is they tend to put a training program in place and teach everybody, check the box. Everybody learns something. And then people go back to their old ways pretty quickly. Yeah. And so what do we do to make this thing come to life and make it work? And what we've really learned is that it comes down to the frontline sales leader. You have to get the frontline sales leader engaged behind it, coaching, reinforcing, which is why John said, last thing we need is another sales training program. How do we actually make this thing come to life and work in an organization? Yeah. And we found that by getting that sales leader engaged, working with the salesperson, and not just giving a whole bunch of at once, but drip feeding content to them is really important. I think of it a lot like, you think about a professional athlete, and say I'm going out and I'm taking golf lessons, and I've got a golf pro working with me, and the golf pro says, "Hey, I want you to do this and this and this," and they give me 10 different things. I'm not going to do any of them well. But if that golf pro says, "Hey, here's 1 or 2 things I want you to work on. I want you to think about this each and every time. Practice it over and over and over again. I'll go to the range, I'll practice, and then I'll get that down, and then they come back and they can add to it." Well, that's the same thing that we talk about when we talk about coaching. Give it small, bite-sized pieces that people can work with. Drip feed content to them. It's key to making success happen, as opposed to giving them 10 different things that they need to change at once.
So how do we reinforce this? Because it takes 66 days to make a habit work. It's not the 21 days as we all knew back in the past. It's 66 days. Once you do the sales training, like I'm a trainer myself, the key is once we leave, the lessons are lost. People retain 50%. If they don't use it, they lose it, even after a day. So it's that reinforcement. But how do we make sure that it's built into a good habit? Either of you two can answer that, John or David, on that, because I'd like to get a discussion going on here.
Go ahead, David.
What we do, because I think the key is you have to have both skills, give them skills and execution both. And what we do, Jason, is we create these 90-day plans with sales managers. So they get an opportunity to assess each of their salespeople and where they are. And we haven't talked about the 5 levels of selling, but we can talk about that in a little bit, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How do you get people up to the level 4 and 5, which is where you can make the biggest impact, bigger deal sizes. And people that get into level 4 and 5 have significantly higher average sales per rep. But what we do is now we identify this person is a seller at a certain level, and we want to get them up to a higher level. What are the top 3 areas of strengths that individual has? And then what are the top 3 areas of development that they have? And what we'll do is we'll focus on those over the course of a quarter. You talked about 66 days. So these are 3 things we are going to be on for that entire quarter, reinforcing with that. Just like I was talking about that golf pro, not 10 things, not 20 things, these 3 that we're going to be on.
Yeah.
And then we have modules that we can connect them with that help support that sales manager in the process. So now they're able to learn about that particular skill. They're able to record a video on it so they can get feedback and coaching. And then they'll also reinforce it in the calls that are coming up. And then after that 3 months, now they've got that skill down and saying, okay, now what do we need to do to take you to the next level? And we redo those 90-day plans again. So that becomes the execution. You got to get the skills right, but you have to get the execution right. And that's something I think we have pretty dialed in here.
So the question I'm going to actually pose to you is salespeople are, don't say it, but they can be quite lazy at times. Some of them, I'm not saying all, but there are some out there that just want to get on and do the stuff. They have, I'm saying this as a general thing here. How do we keep them motivated to do that? Because from what I've understand, and I've been working in 25 years or so, is keeping them finger on the pulse. What is the right core strategy to keep them motivated on a day-to-day basis? You and I are avid learners. We learn all the time. But how can we install this in salespeople to make them keep on learning as opposed to being forced to learn? Because once someone's told to do something, it's the wrong thing. It's like when you tell your kids to stop running. What do? They carry on running. How can we linguistically get them onto the place of learn?
Well, a couple of things that come to mind for me, and I'll let you jump in, John. But one is the best sales coaches in the world don't tell people what to do. It's more of an ask. So if we have a baseline of what success looks like, and we're all in agreement on what success looks like, and then we talk about where that person is right now, and then we say, hey, Jason, what do you think it's going to take? Tell me what you think your biggest strengths are in achieving these level 4 and 5 calls, and what do you think your biggest areas that you need help with? And we have a conversation, and we can have a conversation, and I can challenge you, I can ask you questions, we can, but in the end we decide on what they are. But if you're part of developing what that development plan looks like, you are far more likely to actually do what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. Now that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is the manager has to be engaged and involved. And no matter what, if the manager falls off the map on something, people are going to go back their old ways pretty quickly. It's just the nature, human nature.
It is.
In our system, we can see the 90-day plans happening. Because we have them in a system where you can see them and they roll up, and you can also see what's being coached through the system that we have, and so as long as there's a commitment from the managers to keep that going, we watch and monitor, and we're working with the managers. So the way we work it in our engagement, it's pretty hard for them to fall off the wagon. Through the engagement. John, you want to ask?
No, John, sorry, I keep thinking of questions to ask you because I always get quite excited about this. How do we keep them? We all are competitive, aren't we? Like, we're all very competitive in our own shell. But how do we keep that competition going? Do you have anything like a gamification? How do we keep, and this is feeding forward to some golden nuggets for the audience here. How do we keep, based on gamification or based on something else, how do we keep it competitive to learn? Because I think that's the really core aspect to being, I've learned more than you today. I've learned more than you today. I'm getting ahead of the game here. So what are some good tactics for us to use, or for the salespeople to use here?
John, you want to go?
Sure. So one of the elements, resources that we provide to the frontline sales leaders and the sales force is a platform that allows them to rehearse and practice skills. And it's a video recording role play platform. So our 49 micro-learning e-modules on a variety of topics about sales. This is probably the process, is that they would agree between the manager and the rep, here are the 3 that I want to do this quarter. And so they would watch one of these 10-minute micro-learning videos. They would be given an exercise to demonstrate the skill, record themselves demonstrating that skill, provide that to the manager, and then the manager can do one of 3 things. They can say, Jason, there's one part of that that I think you could just maybe, do a little bit better on. I'd like to record it again and send it to me. Or the manager could say, good job, let's do that the next time we're on calls. Let's see that way. Or the third thing they can say, I would like to add that to our board, which is a compendium library of best practices from our sales force, the best of the best, demonstrating how do you open a call, to create ROI, how do you build an action, what's your message. Those are all available 24/7, mobile ready. So you could be sitting in a parking lot before going to a call and saying, I think I'm going to get a price objection. I'm going to go to the leaderboard and see how Jason handled that price objection. And there you have it.
So that's based on the reps that have already recorded this. Is that right? Within that sales organization, that specific sales organization.
Right, and that virtual platform actually supplements and adds to the amount of coaching that the rep gets in 2 ways. One is the manager can do that Sunday night watching the telly and provide feedback to people and watch videos. The second piece is that senior sales leadership now in are actually managers or coaches. So those platform building that there, I don't know if it's gamification is, and going back motive, people join companies and quit managers. What we do is we promote senior salespeople who are really good at the frontline sales leader jobs, and we don't train them. And the next thing you know, there's a retention problem. And I can tell you here in the States, open territory, talent, right? Territories say, good one. So it's a big problem right now. Selection and retention is a big problem.
So what do we think is the answer for this? Like tech is huge. Like I know here in Dublin, Ireland, we have all the big tech companies here, LinkedIn, Intel, Google and all that. But people keep jumping ship from one place to another, to another, to another. And that I've been coaching people that they're literally only there for a year, which is quite frustrating when you train them and they leave and they go, hang on a minute, I'm looking over here. How can we retain talent? And how can we make sure that they stay longer than they actually are? If they're really good, they want to produce results, but I think the ego gets in the way.
Well, if you look at the literature, what particularly the younger millennials and Gen Z, et cetera, they want a career opportunity, they want development, they want continuous learning. And if they're not getting place elsewhere, they
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally concur with you. So a question to you, David, actually, and for you both, actually, what is success? What is a successful salesperson? What do they look like? What do they think? What do they actually do? How do they act? We have all of this wonderful learning stuff, but I'm always interested in the mindset of a salesperson. What do they do? How can we find these people? What do they think of? I'm always intrigued and fascinated by that. If we find these people, can we just jump into their brains a little bit and work out what they do?
We love jumping into their brains, and we want to keep them. Hey, just I'll add on to John, and then I'll jump into your question. We have a customer that had about 1,100 salespeople. They split them up into two, and it was really a great case study. About 550 people went through the level 5 system, and the other 550 did not. And then they tracked the results of it. And the reason why I share this with you is because in the end, one of the things that it actually kind of surprised me in the beginning, and it shouldn't, but it's the fact that you kind of expect that, hey, when we put our system in place, we get better sales, better gross margin. In this particular case, this company had a pretty significant issue with turnover of their salespeople. They found that the people that went through the system dropped turnover by 50%. I mean, it's significant. And it makes me realize how important coaching is in the process, because if you just think about that 50% is huge, but these millennials, they come to work for you, and if they don't feel like they're being coached and professionally developed, they go on their own way pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Now, in answer to your question about really getting into the head of the salesperson, that's always a very difficult question. But quality, I think getting into the quality and people understanding where they are in the quality level is such a key foundation. We have found that when we pull sales leaders together in the same organization, frontline sales organization, the same company, and this is kind of fun to try actually, if you haven't done this for your listeners, have each of the sales managers individually write down, what does a quality call look like in your organization? What does success look like? Wow, you know what you're going to find? They can't agree.
Yep.
You can't agree on what a quality call looks like. How are we ever going to achieve quality if your frontline sales leaders can't agree? And it kind of makes me laugh. It's sort of what John was talking about earlier. I've got this Boeing plane model sitting behind me. If Boeing managers couldn't agree on what quality looks like, I don't think we'd all feel very comfortable flying. Thankfully, they do feel pretty good about the quality. Yeah. But this becomes a really important factor. And so what we do is we define what quality looks like, and then we define it in 5 levels. And I'm happy to share the levels if you're interested.
Yeah, that was exactly what I'm thinking of. And I'm sure the audience are thinking exactly the same thing. What is level 5? Look, I picked up your books here, and it's got level 5 for the audio listeners. 3 books here, very easy to read. It's like Who Moved the Cheese? Very easy book to read. But these are exactly the same. But I'm intrigued by the incremental steps of level 5. I've looked at it, but I want you to explain exactly what they are and how they work. What are the golden nuggets that we can all take from it and help everyone in the audience to learn from it and grow our collective knowledge? And that could be for John or David. You can jump in either way.
Well, first, thank you for the comment. David. Well, first, thank you for the comment on the book. We are salespeople who put things together for salespeople as opposed to theoretical, because we know how salespeople think. But hey, the 5 levels, we really start and define it with level 1, which is a professional visitor. And this is somebody that goes out and feels that friends buy from friends. They go out and develop relationships, never get in any meaningful conversations. We find, Jason, that about 10% of calls fall in that particular category. The level 2 is getting into a price seller. And these are the people that drive us crazy, but they call up and they'll say, hey, I got something and I can give it to you for a better price. And they focus the conversation on price. Sometimes it may not even be their fault. Maybe they're trying to have a really good conversation. The buyer brings them into price and they get stuck in it. They really quickly. Value. Yeah, it happens all the time. And, we find about 10 to 15% of calls fall in that price seller category.
Yep.
And then you get into the third, which is that transactional teller. These are people that know their product, they know their service, they know their solution, and they just can't wait to tell you all about it. Get in a presentation mode. Let me go through all the details and tell you all about it. And This is really what I might consider an epidemic, because that's about 40 to 50% of sales calls out there. It is a major issue.
Yep.
And when John mentioned early on about the fact that these 60% of sales calls are scrap and waste, meaning they're not moving the buying process forward, most of that's happening in those first 3 levels of an organization. When you get into level 4, you're getting into the first level of professional selling. And that is where it's all the things you'd expect of a good seller. Asking great questions, understanding what's important to your customer, linking back a solution, differentiating through your unique strengths, gaining commitment, all those things you would expect. But it's really about finding a fit for your solution. Now, when you get to level 5, so level 4 is a good thing. Level 5, I mean, you see significant increases in average deal size. And the salespeople on level 5 are typically the very best salespeople in an organization. These are the true value creators.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people that, they're stepping out of their shoes into their customer's shoes, understanding their world, how they make money, bringing ideas and thoughts to the table that will help them in making decisions, really crafting what that solution looks like. Those are the types of calls where oftentimes maybe the person on the other side would say, I would have paid for that sales call. I got some great ideas and thoughts on moving it forward.
So they're the people that help people buy as opposed to sell. So it's flipped the script a little bit because they're listening really intentionally. They're using lots of empathy to really understanding where they actually are in their actual position, where they sit in the landscape of the organization, who the influencers are, who the buyers are. But they're using people like puppets, not like puppets. Excuse my terminology there, but they're playing they're playing the right game where they use and utilize all of the tools that they actually have to help them buy based on what the conversations have gone on. Would that be a fair assessment, or is there anything else on there on top of a couple more layers on top of what that is? Maybe John.
Well, you mentioned the word mindset, and one of the nugget mindsets that helped me when I was a representative carrying the bag was most representatives think, well, I have a product and I'm going to give you that product, and you in return are going to put money in my pocket. The level 5 value creator says, I have a product and I'm going to give you that product and I'm going to put money in your pocket. Yep. And that's a nuance, but it's a very important nuance.
I totally concur. And value selling is where we should all be at, but it takes a little bit of time. The best sellers out there know exactly that. They know how to create good metaphors and stories based around the people, the place. There's something in our brains called the mirror neurons where we actually jump inside other people's heads so they can actually see it and feel it, as opposed to you explaining the features, advantages, benefits, and blah, 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 which is pretty old school, really, without using the latest neuroscience research and based on how people work and how people operate and their brains actually work. So I'm always intrigued by how you're working and how you're operating and your systems and what you do. Can you give us some golden nuggets that will give our audience some really good insights about how you guys work and how you implement success?
Well, I'll start. I mean, we really aren't a training event. As David mentioned, we're trying to help the client install an ongoing development system. So we work side by side with them over a 180-day period. And the consulting engagement is giving them a process, giving them the skills, and giving them the tools and metrics that they need in order to measure success. And at the end of that time, they can choose to continue to engage us, or they can take all of the licensed intellectual property and the tools and the process and continue on running it themselves. So it's not come in for 2 or 3 days and run a workshop or do a half-day virtual module. We're side by side with that chief revenue officer working and with their people to make sure that this is something that's sticky.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally concur. Everything has to be sticky and into an approach. I'm curious about this. Tell me what motivates you guys to do what you do, because I know it's a similar question, but I'm always fascinated because you two are salespeople. I think we're all salespeople at the end of the day, no matter what industry, and I think it's the best industry to be in. But what really motivates you to do what you do to help others get what they need?
Jason, I think sales is a great profession, and people who get in it and learn it and embrace it will find an incredible career where they can make great money and have a lot of fun. And for me, it motivates me to say, how can we help make people better? How can we make a difference in the world? And, I get excited about what we do because I see this as something that we can make an impact on the entire world of the way people go about selling. And that's what motivates me and gets me excited. Look, if we learn, we get better. It's great for everybody. And the world's changing. The way people buy is changing. And the way we sell needs to be changing along with it. And so I really like being part of that and helping people to get there. And when light bulbs go off, as you know, Jason, nothing more fun than when that happens.
Absolutely. I get very excited. I get butterflies in my stomach when that happens. What about yourself, John? Because I know you're both in the same company there, but I'm intrigued because you got a huge amount of experience with what you've done. You both have, and we all have. But I'm interested to see what motivates yourself as well, John, to do what you do and keep on doing it and keep on plugging through it.
Well, I would echo everything David has said. I think the sales profession is absolutely one of the ways that you can, help others and help yourself. And, we have an expression, it's nice doing well, doing good. We're helping people make a better living and provide for their families, etc. So there's that altruistic aspect to it. You asked earlier what distinguishes high-performing reps from others. One observation I would have, and there are probably several, but they're intellectually curious. You don't have to tell them, that you should go really dig into a 10K in an annual report before calling on a customer to find out what the risk factors are that they should be addressing in a call. They do that naturally. And I'm intellectually curious. What I love about our work is every time we talk to a new client, I'm learning about their business, I'm learning about their customers, I'm learning about their products. And I think as long as you continue to learn, we have 3 values in the organization. The third is grow. You have to have lifelong learning. And if you don't, you're going to atrophy. And I'm not a spring chicken anymore, so I don't want to atrophy.
The question I was thinking of, I'm thinking of Amazon. There's a big office in Dublin now due to Brexit and all of that. But they have an ethos in there about failing. But everyone goes in there to fail. But you have to learn from your failures quickly. They only let you fail once, but they give you the sources to give you everything that you need to learn and grow. But they also want to make sure that you fail as well, but you grow from that failure into a growth mindset. It's just something that I've heard that they do, and they do it quite well in terms of, well, don't make that mistake again. They want you to fail, but they want you to learn from failure, which is, I think, is a good thing, because we can give all that positivity, we can give everything else like that, but sometimes people need to fail before they can grow. That's my perception. And what's your take on that? How would you look at that?
Some of the biggest failures I've had in my life are some of the most painful things that have kept me awake at night and hurt me are the ones that I've learned the most from, because they hurt so much. You don't want to do that again. I think that is absolutely right. And understanding where you failed or why you failed is critically important. And I think that's that reflection of looking back and saying, hey, how did I do? Yeah. And being able to assess it is really important. Can I give your readers just the one nugget I think here is if you were actually maybe a couple nuggets, when you walk away from this, if you do one or two things, here's something I would do. One, define whether you use our level 5 system or create your own. Define what quality looks like in your organization so that when somebody gets done with a call, they can look back and reflect and say, how did I do? Did I meet it or not meet it? And when people walk out of ours and say, gosh, that was a level 3 call. What did I do? Here's what I need to do to do better. That is a key right there. So whether you use our system or create your own, it's critical. And the other thing I'd say too for your listeners is make sure each salesperson, or if you're a salesperson, you go on a call, make sure you have a primary and a secondary objective as to what's going to move this buying process forward. What's going to help move it forward? And if you don't get your primary, make sure you've got a backup secondary. Those two things will make such a significant difference in an organization and helps us to go back and reflect and say, what do we do well and not do well so we can be better? I think it's such an important point you make, Jason.
I
I,
absolutely concur.
I was just going to hitchhike on that, Jason. It strikes me as though sales leaders sometimes want to prevent their salesperson from failing on a call.
Yeah.
And we call this the parent. They want to put their arms around them and kind of do it for them and, save them from any adversity. And so they'll do things like try to jump in and rescue the call and take it over. And a really good sales leader has to be able to sit back and say, let's just let this go the way it's going, because the lesson that they will learn from this experience will be indelibly etched in their mind. And it's the best thing. And, you don't want to do that on your biggest account or opportunity, but there are certainly many calls where if the person fails, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I totally and utterly agree. I think that's some of the best things. You anchor those points in the past and go, I don't want to ever do that again. I failed fast there and I sunk. And some days you're just not feeling it. We're all human beings. Some days our body, whatever's going on, we just don't feel it. We make the calls after calls and we're just failing after failing and go, what's going wrong? So that's the point where we need to review or speak with someone like a coach or speak with someone who is our mentor throughout there. I say that mentor, who mentored you both to get where you wanted to go? Because I'm always intrigued by where you got the inspiration, but I think everyone should have a mentor or coach, whatever you might want to call it. I might have just gone off in another tangent, but when I think of something, I'd love to ask people because I'm intrigued about what motivated you to doing what you're doing, but who mentored you and who gave that burst of inspiration to get where you guys are going or gone? Either of you can answer that.
Well, I think having a mentor is key. And I have several mentors in my life who I send notes to thanking them for mentoring me and providing me advice and coaching. One of them actually is Bob Miller, the founder of Miller Hyman. I became really good friends with him and was a great mentor. I've had bosses in my career who some of them were awful coaches. And I've had some that were unbelievable coaches. In fact, I just wrote an article recently that's going to be in Selling Power magazine that talks about one of my managers who I actually wrote a note to, and he's retired now. And I said, I just want to let you know, I just wrote an article about you because you made such a big impact on me and my life. And the reason why, phenomenal coach. I mean, he guided me, he pushed me, he took me places I thought I would never get on my own. And my career grew the most during my time working with him. And I'm just so thankful for him. And he's Australian, and I hope he gets a chance to listen to this podcast, which I'm sure he will. And he made a big difference in my life.
Awesome stuff. And the same question to yourself, John.
Well, in my first book, I have a dedication page which lists all of the people I feel are responsible for any success that I've had. And for the most part, they were either family members or bosses, past managers. I had a rep in Chicago, a guy named Charlie Platypodis, which is Greek, meaning flatfoot. And Charlie was, and probably still is, one of the most outstanding reps I ever had. And in a funny way, he was older than I was. I was 26 when I took over the region. Charlie might have been in his mid-30s, seasoned guy. But I learned a ton from listening to Charlie.
That's absolutely awesome. A question I'd like to ask and pose to people, if you were interviewing yourselves, what questions would you actually ask yourselves?
You've asked some really good. You've asked some really good ones, which is, why do we continue to do this at this point if we've been doing it for a long time? My question would probably be, what's next? Where is this all going? Where's this world of sales going? And how are we going to stay on top of that and continue to support and make them successful?
Brilliant. And the same question to yourself, David. I know you've probably been thinking about that. What would you say to yourself if you were interviewing yourself?
I love your question, Jason. And it's a hard one, isn't it? I think that there was one that I saw one time that I really liked. And as a CEO of a company is if you were to be hiring your replacement tomorrow, what would you tell them that they should do that you didn't do? And get you thinking, what is it that stops us from doing things? We know there's things we need to do and we don't do them. What stops us? And if you can get to what that is, we can all figure out how to tackle that and figure out why do we have that block? What's stopping us from moving forward?
Awesome. I love the answers. So tell me this is, you sent me 3 phenomenal books. I'm eagerly awaiting to queue them up once I finish my other book and my audio book, finish those, and I'm going to get cracking on with these 3 books. Tell us a little bit of a synopsis about, very quickly, each individual book and where they can find them, and a little bit about your website and stuff like that. Here's your sales pitch.
Go ahead, John.
Well, on the books, all the books are available on Amazon and worldwide, so you can get them there. What was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
Oh, I can't remember what the second part. How can people find you?
Yes. Okay.
So, Jason, the level 5 selling book is all about defining what that quality sales call looks like, creating that benchmark in your organization. The level 5 coaching book adds on to that and says, look, if you want to make this successful in your company, it's about the frontline sales leaders and how do you get them engaged and doing the right things from a coaching perspective and driving that high quality calls. And then when you get to the level 5 sales leader, that's really a field guide of what does a frontline sales leader need to be focused on? Well, they better be good at recruiting, training, and coaching. And those are the 3. And our entire business helps support that in companies and put that system in place. And so if anybody has any questions on that, they can certainly reach out to us. And, it's really easy. I'm David, he's John. So it's David at Level 5 Selling or John at level5selling.com. 5 spelled out. Yep.
Thank you so much today. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I could have probably talked all day with you guys because you're very interactive. You just got so much knowledge to give to people forward. So I thoroughly enjoyed listening to you. So I thank you both, and I take my hat off to what you've done so far to date. And I love it. You can find yourself on level5selling.com as well. You've listened to the Global Sales Leader podcast. I'm your host, Jason Cooper. Every week I speak to phenomenal leaders that can give extra insights to make our selling practice, and it is because there's everyone in the world is a seller, to make things better, make them easier to us to learn and grow. Thank you so much again.
Jason, thank you. Really appreciate your passion and what you're doing for our field.
Yeah, love your energy, Jason. Just terrific. I hope someday to get to Ireland to golf, and I'll get to Dublin and look you up.
Thank you so much. And a Guinness.
And a Guinness, you bet.